I'm Oz and this is my aquarium. Today I'm going to make a video about this Ludwigia Repens. Ludwigia, this plant here on the top. Although it may appear as if it's just growing floating, it goes all the way to the back, and it has grown all the way out this far just in a couple of weeks since the last time I trimmed it. I trimmed it a couple of weeks ago, and I actually ruined my clippings by leaving them too long in a peroxide solution to get rid of hair algae. But anyway, this is just a regular Ludwigia. It's not any of the special types that they have, and it was one of the first plants that I started with. And at the moment, it's probably my favorite plant because I really like when it starts growing on the top like this. Let me go ahead and get this snail off of here. But all the websites and stuff, the pH and hardness and all of that stuff, I'm totally out of range of that. I am like harder and higher pH. I run close to 8 on my pH, and my hardness is really hard. Like I use these little test strips that I got recently, and it says very hard. So, but I don't have any problems with it. Now I run, all of my tanks have dirt. They have organic garden soil from Home Depot, and there's about an inch or so in the bottom. And then it's capped with gravel, and all my tanks are like that. Although this plant will grow floating, I think that it prefers to have dirt or a nutrient-rich substrate. Now, I have seen people have issues growing this and say they have a hard time with it. But I mean, this stuff has just grown like a complete weed for me. Like I said, they've all been dirty tanks. Now, typically what you're going to see with these is just a stem like what you see in the back there. I'm going to trim all this in this video, and you'll get to see what it looks like. But when you let it grow up along the top like this and go nuts, I find that it splits off and puts out new plants off of it. If you look at this piece, this one's got a lot of hair algae on it, but you can see all of these new pieces that are growing up off of the Ludwigia. And that's going to allow you to really like double and triple your plant mass on this plant. Now I do like when it grows over the top like this, but as you can see, it grows all of these roots that some people might think are unsightly when you let it just go nuts like this. And also it's worth noting that the bottoms of the plants, the new leaves grow from the tops. So the bottoms of the plants, those are the same leaves that have been on there the whole time. And so they don't look real great. They don't look as good as the longer stuff. So you kind of have to get into a rotation when you're trimming it so that you're putting pretty stuff in the front and trimming off or trimming down the uglier stuff and allowing it to grow up in the back, and then kind of rotating in order to keep a nice pretty looking plant like that instead of kind of bare and sparse like the bottoms are. So I have like multiple rows kind of, and I alternate. So I'll like trim these long ones, and I'll leave some of the ones that are starting to get long in the back, and then I will replant some of these on a lower row to kind of cover up all of the roots and stuff from this other stuff. I run a cheap Night Crew light. I run these on all my tanks. This is like a $30 light, maybe 40. And this tank, the light is actually for a 20 long or a 29, so it's too short for this aquarium, which is why you kind of got some dark spots in the corners. So today I'm going to do a video on how we're going to trim this and how to propagate it. And we're going to propagate it into this 29 gallon that I've got over here that needs to be planted. That's going to be my breeding for profit tank. So I'm going to pause the video, and then when it comes back, I will be cutting this plant down, talking about where to cut, how to cut, and then we'll continue on with propagating. Okay, I just got some cheap mustache scissors. I'd like to have some of the fancy ones, but I don't have them. So the idea is we want to find places, we want to isolate out these stems, and we want to find places, if we can, that already have split off the node. So if you can see this, let me see if I can get this out of the way, make sure you can see it. If you can see this all the way down, we're finding this one that's sprouted one off. This is what we're going to call a node. A node is where these two main leaves are on the stem. And the idea is to cut right at the top of, right at the node, a little bit above the node. If you can see where I've got that. A little bit above that node. So we cut that, and now we still have a new growth coming off, and that new growth is going to extend out. So now we just want to go, we want to try to do that for all these. And the lower down you can find a node that's growing something, the better. Because the bottoms of the plants start to, look kind of scraggly. Now you can see I got a lot of hair algae on this one here probably, and we'll address that later. But see, we can get pretty much below it to find a node here. And so we just effectively cut most of that hair algae out because of that. And we're just going to keep going. We're going to find these right above the node. You can see right above the node where there's a piece sticking out. Now some people say, see, that's actually a side shoot there. So we're going to go ahead and cut this here. Now some people say that when you cut this, it will grow two out of this. Like if I was to cut this right here, that it will grow two out of that node. And I've never seen that happen. It will try to grow two new shoots, but only one usually takes off. So here's another one. I'm going to cut it right at that node where it's got new growth coming out. And I also like to leave some. Like you see, this one's a little shorter, and I'm going to leave that one. And see, this one's got multiple shoots coming off right here. So this one did actually make two, but they were on different nodes. You can see that it made one on this node and one on this node. So we're going to cut off at this node so that I can leave a piece here. Because I do like to leave a little bit of long pieces just to keep the tank looking nice, because I like that look. I'm still going to continue on. I'm finding good spots on the plants to cut whenever possible. See, this one, if you can see it, only has a couple of small plants coming out of the boat. That's good enough. We've got small growth coming out, so we're going to trim right there above it. And here's a piece of Hygrophila corymbosa that I haven't replanted anywhere. I hope you guys can see all this. So this one's still good. I like that one. I'll leave that one. Got a couple more here. Try to get it at a nice spot. This one too. I know you guys can't see all this. And I've got one over here too. I'm just going to let this one go. And so maybe you can see just how much I got out of that. I mean, that is a shitload of plants. Okay, so I'm going to pause it. And then when we come back, I'm going to talk about how I'm going to cut this up and propagate it. Okay, so here's all of our trimmings. And if you remember, there was some hair algae on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this hydrogen peroxide. It's just regular cheap hydrogen peroxide. And I'm not going to do any special measuring. Get down, kitty. Come on. I'm not going to do any special measuring. I'm just going to put some in there. Not too much. Maybe a little more. And now this is where I screwed up the last time I propagated, is I left it in there too long. I mean, it was my own fault. I knew better. But I left it in there for like, I don't know, it was a good 45 minutes. And it ended up deteriorating the plants. It will screw the plants up if you leave them in there too long. The hydrogen peroxide, what it does is it creates an extra atom in the oxygen, like a third oxygen atom or something like that. I don't know the exact science behind it, but the algae, being a single-celled organism, cannot process that. So when it uptakes that hydrogen peroxide, it kills it. Now, I would normally leave it in there a little bit longer, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, but for the sake of the video, we're going to cut the algae off as we go and just leave those pieces behind mostly so it doesn't get transferred into the other tank. You could also put it in there and address it in the tank with hydrogen peroxide, which I'm sure I'll make a video of that at some point. But for now, I'm just going to try to get a little bit of it on there and hope that it kills it some. It doesn't take very long. And what will happen is that hair algae will start turning colors. It'll turn like a white or a gray or sometimes a blue when it's dead, and you'll be able to tell. Okay, so let's move this off to the side. I'm going to start pulling these out. I'm going to talk about how this works. Okay, so I kind of messed up that shot. I'm going to cut this in so that you can see this and I can convey this to you. Okay, so you want to make sure you know which side is the top. All right. Now we've cut it from the bottom. And when, like I said before, when you let it go and grow over the top, it will start to shoot out these new pieces. And it may do that even still, but in my experience, it starts doing it when you let it grow across the top. Now, a lot of times, or I find most of the time, it grows a root on the other side of that piece. So you get a new plant coming out and you get a root. So what you want to do is, see on this one here first, because I don't have any roots at the bottom and I still want to use that piece. So I'm just going to pull some leaves off and I will just stick that right in the ground and it will root, just not quite as quickly. I will stick that stem in the ground. So then I'm going to go up and I'm going to find a node. Now again, because I know it was hard to see in the last one, a node is where these two leaves come out of this main stem. That is the node right there. And that node is where your new little plants will grow. And it's also where, if you cut it at a node like this that doesn't have a plant and stick it in the ground, it will shoot one out of there. I just like to do it to make it a little easier like this. So we will go just above the node. We don't want to cut all the way up to the other node. We want to cut closer back this way to this node. And we cut right there. So then we have a new plant coming out, and we will stick that right into the ground, and this will root, and this will grow across the top of the tank. Now on the center, the ones that are closer to the center here, okay, so this one right here, I could try to do something with that, and I probably should have cut it off there, but I decided just to do it this way. So on this one, we're gonna cut up near a node. Since I'm not saving this piece, I don't need to cut it close to this node. I'm going to just throw that piece away. I'm going to cut it up close to this node right here. So that way what happens is I take that leaf and this leaf and cut right on the other side of that node. And then what I have is a brand new little plant with roots on the bottom that I can stick into the substrate. And you just stick that right down in the substrate like I'll show you in a moment. And it will grow another plant. just like that. So then again, here's another one that was right next to it, and I'll catch the leaf with it, but I'll cut it on this side of the node, and I'll cut it on that side of the node, and I'll take this leaf off. And then even though that's really small and it'll take it a while to take off, this will grow. Excuse the noise from my dogs. And then I'll leave a long one. I like to leave some long ones, just so like I said, I get that rotation going where some are longer than others. So when I'm trimming one plant, there's another plant that's longer that's going to take over, so you never get a whole bunch of little short stubby plants. And that's basically how you do it. I mean, you know, you want to try to cut, like I say, if you don't have side shoots, you want to cut right in between these two, right above the node. So you got the node, and then you will cut right above the node, and then it will shoot a new plant out of this corner. Out of these corners, it will shoot a new one out. And it will try to shoot two, and sometimes it may shoot two, but usually only one takes off. And, you know, on the bottom side, like if I was going to cut this one right here, again, I would find a place with a root. So I would come down, and we see we've got some roots coming down right here. Again, you don't have to have that, but it's better. And then I would cut it off just under this one, and then I would trim it down to just above this one and plant this other piece in the ground, but I'm going to leave this long. So that's how you propagate Ludwigia. And pretty much all stem plants are the same. You're going to cut them at a node, and then you're going to shove the bottom side into the substrate, and it will continue to grow. So like a plant like this that grows really fast, you can just like double the plant almost every 3 or 4 weeks, you know, sometimes faster. And that's, you know, I use no CO2, no special expensive lighting. I do use a little bit of a all-in-one fertilizer, but that's it. And for me, this Ludwigia just takes off. It's like the best plant, and it eats a lot of nutrients out of the substrate as well. So I'm going to move on to the planting, and we'll be back. So now what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to take some that I've selected out of the group. I'm going to place them in here just to kind of try to hide some of this nasty stuff, these roots. Now you could pull these roots off to a certain extent, but like I said, I like to kind of grow them in stages. So I can like just take this bottom. You have to make sure that you're putting them in the right way. I'm just going to take this bottom, I'm just going to shove them right into the substrate with my finger. No special tools. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get them to just stay. Kick some rocks back in, kind of pack it in. You want to be gentle with them because they can snap pretty easily. So the idea is we kind of hide the more yucky looking stuff with the better stems from this batch, and then when the stuff that's in there that's taller grows in, we'll cut it off, and by that time this stuff will be a little taller, and then we'll repeat the process and just keep on going like that, so that we always have some pretty decent looking stuff in there. Because when you cut it out, it looks kind of ragged for a while. So I'm just going to throw a couple more in here. And just stick it all the way, shove it all the way down in there, and then pack it in a little bit. Don't pull on it, and don't get too excited, or you will break it, or you will have a hard time getting it to stay. So as you can see, and these will eventually, they'll work their way back up to the top. and they'll straighten themselves out. This one is a really nice stem. I'm going to put it in right here. It's got multiple pieces coming off of it. It should look nice once it gets going. And so the idea is, by the time this stuff in the back and the stuff that I've left, see, this is from a previous trimming. By the time that stuff gets up all the way to the top like the other was, then this new stuff that I just put in and the stuff that I trimmed will be up in here somewhere. So then I'll trim the long stuff and I'll just repeat the process. Now sometimes, eventually, you may have to take these main stems out and replace them, because eventually these will just look really ragged. You just kind of have to keep maintaining it like that. And these will turn up toward the light and grow. In my tanks, they grow very quickly. I mean, in 2 weeks, I will have to do this again. Maybe less, because some of these are still pretty long here. But in 2 weeks, for sure, it will look like it did before. So I'm going to move to the breeding for profit tank, and we're going to put the rest of this in there. We'll be right back. So this is going to be my breeding for profit tank. And I'm going to put the rest of this in here, because since it grows so fast, I think this is a good one that I can trade to my local fish store every so often for store credit. And we're just going to kind of stay toward the back. And this has got a really deep substrate bed, so it might be a little harder. See, it broke off. That's what I say, you got to be kind of gentle. Get your finger on it and work it down in there and get it close to the dirt. And just continue. You got to make sure, again, that you're putting these right side up. And yes, the rapacia is all over the place, so. And we're just going to keep on going, getting it down in the dirt all the way. Now, this tank is not designed to look pretty. This tank, the whole purpose is to try to figure out a way to pay for my food and pay for, you know, whatever I can by selling some of this stuff, whether that be to people in groups that I'm a member of, or to local fish store for credit. I don't want it to be too dense or throughout the whole tank, because I'm going to eventually have to be able to catch things in this tank. So I'm going to try to stay isolated toward the ends of the tank, and hopefully I'll be able to scare stuff out from behind the plants when the time comes to pull stuff out of there. Now, in my mind, if I alternate and I get enough of this in here, I should be able to go sell some every week. I just don't know if people will want to buy some every week. So it's going to be a learning process. I've got a couple of stores that I'm pretty sure will buy some stuff from me. So again, the object of this tank is not to be pretty, so I'm not taking too much care in where I'm placing it, how I'm placing it, etc., except for just to get it down into the dirt and let it start doing its thing. That's all I'm really interested in. I think I'm going to work exclusively on this side this time, because the plecos like to hang over on the other side by that filter and stuff. So if I ever want to get them out, I'd like to be able to be where have a spot where they want to be. But truth is, because I'm putting plants over here, they'll probably immediately start hanging out over here on this side. And even these little ones, even these little pieces that don't have much roots, I mean, these stem plants, I mean, they will grow if your water's good. Now, I do use a little bit of fertilizer. I use Thrive, which is a all-in-one fertilizer. It's probably similar to your Easy Green or other all-in-one fertilizers. I don't use it very often, and I don't really use it as directed. I just kind of squirt some in there when I do a water change, a little less than what it says, because I don't want too many nutrients. I don't want to start growing too much algae. I had a problem with that in another tank. Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, I've got quite a bit of a little more planning to do here, but I think I've pretty much gone through everything I know about this plant, and I'll be going over some of the other plants that I have as time goes on, and new plants that I may get and learn stuff about. And I'm going to keep updating on this breeding for profit tank. All of this stuff that I have is young as far as my fish that I plan on doing stuff with. One of these plecos in here is really young and not ready to breed yet. So, and obviously, you know, there's not much in this tank yet, so it's going to be an ongoing process. But I would say, if everything goes according to plan, in 6 months or so, this tank should be full of stuff. Like full to the point where you guys are going to be like, isn't that way too much stuff in that tank? So for now, I'm just going to leave it right here with this stuff on this side. And I'll do some tank maintenance soon. I'm going to be doing some videos on how I maintain tanks, my thoughts about things like algae, and which I've had some serious problems with in the 20 long that I used to have. Now, in my estimation, this tank right here, when you see it in a week or two, it's going to have some serious growth. I mean, you saw how many stems I put in there. And so, I guess that's going to be it for this video. This is Ludwigia Repens. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Later.